Thank you for staying glued to QTV. Time now for the news. The headlines. The government says it will not declare foot and mouth disease, which recently spread to 3 new districts, as a national disaster. Transparency International Zambia has welcomed the decision by RTSA Chief Executive Officer Zindaba Soko to proceed on leave to pave way for his investigation. And a fugitive police officer wanted for the murder of a fellow officer in Lusaka has handed himself to police at Chipata Central Police Station. Here now is the news in detail. Livestock and Fisheries Minister Kampamba Chewe has reiterated that the outbreak of foot and mouth disease in some parts of the country will not be declared a national disaster because government has not failed to contain the disease. Recently, Zambia National Farmers Union President Jervis Zimba called on government to declare foot and mouth disease a national disaster in order to get adequate support from partners. Mrs. Chewe says calls to declare FMND a national disaster are misplaced because government is doing everything possible to ensure the disease is contained. She says government is spending huge sums of money on vaccination and is calling on livestock farmers to adhere to the measures that have been put in place to fight the disease. Speaking to Q News in an interview, Mrs. Chewe says so far government has spent more than 27 million kwacha on vaccines. The minister has emphasized that there is no reason to declare the foot and mouth disease a national disaster. The disease, which initially broke out in Chisamba and Chiwombo districts of Central Province, has since spread to Chilanga, Kabwe and Kapirimposhi districts.
There is no way we can call for a national disaster when there is no disaster. FMD is a disease that has been there from time immemorial because it is a virus. And this disease has been contained. If our president hears the statements that our ministry has been issuing, if the union could also come on board and see how we have been vaccinating these animals, how we have been creating the buffer zone. And I also want to call upon the president of Zambia National Farmers Union to also join the campaign of sensitizing his farmers on the illegal movement of these animals. It is very simple. Once you want to move your animals, you get a permit, and these animals are tested for various diseases, not FMD. What we are seeing is that our colleagues, especially the farmers in this industry, want to get animals at a cheaper price. So we want to also appeal to the president of Zambia National Farmers Union to sit down with his farmers. That is his role, to actually bring the farmers on the round table and see how best he can speak to these farmers and those that are doing the illegal movement of these animals. Government is doing everything possible to ensure that the disease does not spread further. But this fight is not just for government also. It is for everybody to come on board. Government has taken a step further in terms of ensuring that there are no illegal movements of these animals. You will now be seeing our officers at every toll gate, at every police checkpoint, so that we ensure that these animals are not moved illegally.
Transparency International Zambia TIZ has welcomed the decision taken by Road Transport and Safety Agency RTSA Chief Executive Officer Zindaba Soko to take leave from work to facilitate investigations into allegations of money laundering leveled against him. TIZ Chapter President Ruben Lifuka has also urged all those under investigation for similar offences to emulate Mr. Soko to pave way for smooth investigations. He notes that some in public service that are under investigation lack the moral conscience to do the right thing and step aside to pave way for investigations. Mr. Lifuka has held what he has described as good corporate governance practiced by Minister of Transport and Communications Brian Mushimba. He has told Q News that this should apply right across the length and the breadth of the public service.
Welcomes the wise decision of Mr. Zindaba Soko, the RATSA Chief Executive, to take leave from his position to facilitate investigations into allegations of money laundering leveled against him. This decision comes at a time when some in public service or under investigation lack the moral conscience to do the right thing and step aside to pave way for investigations into similar matters. This good corporate governance practice held by the Minister of Transport and Communication, Honorable Brian Mushimba, should apply right across the length and breadth of the public service. We therefore want to urge all those undergoing investigation in the public service for similar offences to emulate Mr. Soko's example.
The fugitive police officer wanted for allegedly murdering his fellow officer at Lusaka's Monali police post in Lusaka, Kaunda Square, Stage 1, has handed himself to police at Chipata Central Eastern Province. In January this year, Constable Edwin Kabasia shot Constable Lennox Kapila for refusing to arrest a technician who was repairing his television set. Police spokesperson Esther Katongo says that Mr. Kabasia is currently in custody at Chipata Central Police Station awaiting to be transported to Lusaka. Constable Kabasia is reported to have gone to Monali Police Post where he picked up a quarrel with Kapila and later shot him in the stomach using an AK-47 rifle.
We would like to inform members of the public that Constable Kabasia, the fugitive, his fellow officer by the name of himself to police, and he handed himself to Chipata Central Police Station in Eastern Province. He is currently detained in police custody and yet to be brought to Lusaka for charges.
Civil society organizations have joined Law Association of Zambia President Eddie Muitwa in condemning the proposed amendments to the Constitution as contained in the Constitution of Zambia Amendment Bill 2019, which is currently before Parliament. The CSOs include Action Aid Zambia, Alliance for Community Action, Caritas Zambia, Center for Trade Policy and Development, Civil Society Constitution Agenda CISCA, and Chapter 1 Foundation Limited. In a joint statement, the civil society organizations say the amendment to reintroduce deputy ministers would be costly to the Zambian people at a time when the country should be taking austerity measures given the high levels of debt in the country and when many Zambians are struggling to make ends meet due to the high cost of living. They feel these resources could be better used to meet basic services such as health, education, water and sanitation. They further state that removing the Constitution limited will limit on the number of the constituencies and therefore the number of members of parliament will see the party in power, which normally has the majority in parliament, increase the number of members of parliament and constituencies. They say this will ensure that the ruling party always has a majority in parliament and therefore make it easier for them to pass any act of parliament and even to reach the 2/3 threshold to change any provision of the constitution outside of the Bill of Rights. On the proposed introduction of the coalition government amendment, the CSOs feel this undermines the will of the people as stated in the final draft constitution drafted by the technical committee to have a government elected by the majority of the people in Zambia. They state that the fact that the powers in the constitution are being wrestled out of the hands of the people of Zambia, who are the true owners of the country and its constitution, shows that the country is descending into anarchy. Presidential press aide Isaac Chipampe says it is misplaced for anyone to expect President Edgar Lungu to do better in good governance and respect for the rule of law on the basis of the honorary doctorate in good governance conferred on him by the University of Zambia. Mr. Chipampe says the honorary doctorate in question and President Lungu's style of governance are two unrelated issues. In an interview with Q News, Mr. Chipampe says President Lungu does not need a PhD to uphold good governance because he has always adhered to the rule of law. He states that President Lungu is a lawyer with a long experience in governance. Mr. Chipampe says President Lungu should therefore not be assumed to be lacking in either good governance or respect for the rule of law.
The president has always respected the rule of law, and it doesn't take an honorary degree for someone to change his position. So the two are not even linked. The president obviously, as a lawyer and the person who is very experienced in governance. Remember also that the president was previously Home Affairs Minister. He has been Justice Minister. He has been Defense Minister. So when you just look at that kind of pedigree, you don't expect someone to be lacking in good governance and respecting the rule of law. He's a lawyer and he respects, even the case like, for example, the KCM case. you have noticed that the president has not been making many comments because he respects the law. He knows the case is in court. So he hasn't been talking too much about that case. So to assume that he hasn't been observing good governance and the rule of law, and now that he has been given an honorary degree, is going to do better, I think he is misplaced. The two issues are not even related. So unless you give me specific issues where the president has been found wanting, I wouldn't spend too much time explaining whether the president will now respect the rule of law after that honorary degree.
The number of people accessing the pre-exposure prophylaxis PrEP HIV drug has increased from 356 in 2017 to 8,991 by the second quarter of 2019. National HIV Prevention Coalition Director General Victor Mkonka says government has so far created about 340 PrEP sites across the country. And Dr. Mkonka has bemoaned low comprehensive knowledge on HIV and AIDS among adolescent girls and young women, which he says remains a huge challenge. Making a presentation on the status of the implementation of the Voluntary Medical Male Circumcision VMMC program, Dr. Mkonka says more than 2 million men have been circumcised through the Ministry of Health Voluntary Medical Male Circumcision program in Zambia since the start of the project in 2009. Here is a report.
What do you think of a world without diseases, including HIV? Imagine all the pain, the aches and fears all gone away and never to return ever again. Well, that is the ultimate goal, to have a Zambia free of HIV virus. It sounds impossible, but outgoing United Nations program on HIV and AIDS Country Director Dr. Medini Sehau is hopeful that Zambia will reach its target by 2020 and ultimately eliminate new HIV infections by 2030.
Zambia is going to host the SDG Africa Center sub-regional hub, which will be launched in August. So this is one, again, a demonstration of the commitment of the government and the people of Zambia. So definitely Zambia will be high on the map.
National HIV Prevention Coalition Director General Dr. Victor Mkonka shares the country's progress on this fight at the National HIV Prevention Coalition meeting.
There are some countries where they are stagnant. There's no progress happening in reducing the HIV. Zambia, yes, what we want, if we are going to win by 2020 as a target, we are still working. When are we going to start jogging and running? It's a call to action now. Look at our friends in Uganda and Zimbabwe. They are running towards the 2020 target. And I'm sure if we accelerate our efforts at that high speed, but not to crash, but to move into the fourth gear, we should be able to overtake some of our colleagues in Kenya, in Uganda, and join that winning team of Nepal and Cambodia.
And speaking when officiating at the meeting, Ministry of Health Permanent Secretary for Administration Dr. Kakulubelwa Mulalelo says targeted prevention interventions for adolescents and young people should be brought to scale so as to ensure that Zambia reaches the epidemic control.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to emphasize that this meeting is an opportunity for all to review progress that has been made in Zambia and the implementation plan of the roadmap. It is also an opportunity to collectively discuss some of the successes, challenges, gaps, and innovations. It is an opportunity for all stakeholders in HIV prevention to dedicate sufficient efforts and resources to the coalition so that the targets and aspirations of Zambia are met by 2020.
In March this year, African health ministers who gathered at the World Health Assembly appealed to the international community to support a strong replenishment for the Global Fund. The ministers feel that investing more will bring them closer to ending these epidemics by 2030, as it will enable them to bring various critical interventions to scale. Favorite Kalando, QTV News in Lusaka.
The Civil Society Scaling Up Nutrition Alliance, CSO-SAN, has noted that diversification of Zambia's agricultural sector will remain a dream as long as farmers do not have a ready market for other crops other than maize, soya beans and rice. CSO Sun Country Coordinator Matthews Muhuru says market linkages are key components of ensuring that farmers have markets for their produce, hence the need for the Food Reserve Agency to include other crops on the list of crops it is buying from farmers. Mr. Muhuru has expressed displeasure that government, through the Food Reserve Agency, has continued to provide market for maize, soybeans and rice, which defeats the drive for crop diversification. He has told Q News that farmers play a fundamental role in influencing what farmers grow, hence the lack of it for other crops has seen Zambia continue on the path of maize. Mr. Muhuru has, however, commended private sector players such as Zambian breweries who have been providing market for crops such as barley and cassava for the use in the production of beer. Meanwhile, Mr. Muhuru has described the 110 kwacha price for maize announced by the Food Reserve Agency as a rip-off that will make peasant farmers poorer.
The trend by the Food Reserve Agency over the years to list the prices of maize, soya and rice is clear indication of how government's commitment to crop diversification will remain rhetoric. For it to be fully supported, we need government to show commitment, especially supporting the market side. If farmers are not encouraged to grow diverse foods, especially foods that have the potential to change the malnutrition picture in Zambia, then government is not really doing the needed justice in this country. So we've also noticed with concern as the civil society scaling up nutrition that the prices that have been set, especially for maize, are too low, and these have the potential to keep the smallholder farmers poorer.
The opposition UPND has threatened to pull out of the forthcoming Katuba parliamentary by-election if the Zambia police does not level the playing field. UPND chairperson for elections, Gary Nkombo, states that this is notwithstanding that his party has a candidate capable of winning the by-election. Mr. Nkombo says the UPND intends to repeat what they did during the Sesheke by-election when it temporarily withdrew from the poll after realizing that the playing field was uneven. He has told a journalist that at a media briefing in Osaka that the UPND therefore expects the police to respect the campaign schedule which participating political parties have all agreed upon.
For as long as no one abrogates their role, we are very hopeful that this election is going to go negative incident free. As long as the police respect the schedule, that is going to be harmonized. Because what we are going to do tomorrow is to submit our campaign schedule. It is at that point that we are going to do the negotiation to say, okay, on this day, can you allow this to happen? And then once we cast that, it should be put into cement and nothing should change. Just in case the police would like to break the rules, we will do what we did in session. We will withdraw from this election, knowing very well that we have a candidate who is winning. And the consequence of that, they will face themselves from the people of Katuba, because that amounts to depriving them of the choice to get their own representative of their choice. So we found a safe valve. Instead of frustrating and engaging into undesirable acts such as violence, we shall withdraw so that PF can run as they desire to be a single party state.
And UPND Katuba campaign manager Cornelius Mwetwa says the party will not engage in political violence but issue-based campaigns. Mr. Mwetwa is confident that the UPND will return the Katuba seat.
For us as UPND, we are going into Katuba peaceful, conducting a peaceful campaign, and we will ensure that we work with all the stakeholders to ensure that we deliver a peaceful campaign. Like the chairman has said, we've noted the choices PF have made. They are democratic choices. I would like to state that regardless of the candidate PF we are going to choose, UPND will still retain its seat in Katuba. So as we go into Katuba, for us as campaign team, we've given ourselves a task which the party has mandated us: bring back Katuba home where it belongs. So a message to our colleagues in the Patriotic Front: Let them go into Katuba and exercise their democratic right. We've taken note of what they are doing, grading roads.
Abbott, a global heritage organization, has announced plans to introduce viral load test kits in Zambia. Addressing journalists in Osaka, Abbott Vice President for Strategic Innovation, Market Access and Expansion, William Pretorius, says the world's first point-of-care viral load diagnostic test kit has received the World Health Organization's pre-qualification approval. Mr. Pretorius says global funders and ministries of health can now confidently expand access to viral load testing, reaching more people with the needs test, the most compact and efficient point-of-care HIV diagnostic platform available anywhere in the world today. He says the test's quick turnaround time is particularly valuable for monitoring the viral load of HIV-positive pregnant women and cases of suspected HIV treatment failure. Mr. Pretorius believes that the test kits will help Zambia in achieving its vision and goals of ending AIDS.
And we think it will make a great contribution to be able to provide universal access to antiretroviral therapy and viral load monitoring for the people of Zambia. Abbott have got a proud history of working with local governments, with implementers and with stakeholders in Africa, but also at a global level with some of the global funders over many years. And we will obviously continue to do this. The purpose why we are in Zambia, over the next day or two, is to engage with the Ministry of Health and also with all the local thought leaders and implementers here in Zambia to see how this technology could make a contribution to get to that goal of number one, reaching epidemic control, and the longer term goal of ending the HIV epidemic in Zambia.
Citizens' Environmental and Social Concern SESCO says it is clear that the ban on plastic bags above 30 microns is not serving its intended purpose for the environment. SESCO Executive Director Conwell Hakapia notes that almost 6 months after the partial ban came into effect, nothing seems to have changed. Mr. Hakapia says the environment has gotten a raw deal because the only ones benefiting are probably the big shops making a profit through the sale of plastic bags, while on the other hand, other traders and vendors are still giving and selling banned plastic bags with impunity. He has stressed that plastic pollution is still rampant, as evidenced by the huge amount of plastic bags still lying around and at dump sites. Mr. Hakapia states that for the partial ban to work, there is need for proper sensitization, effective inspections, clearly laid down penalties for offenders, and a genuine commitment to fight plastic pollution.
We have gone almost 6 months from the time the plastic ban was finally put into effect, and it's clear this partial ban is not serving its intended purpose for the environment. We think the environment has gotten a raw deal because the only ones benefiting are probably the big shops making a profit through the sale of plastic bags, while on the other hand, the small shops and vendors are still giving out the banned plastic bags with impunity, meaning plastic pollution is still rampant, as evidenced by a huge amount of plastic still in our surroundings and dump sites, which of course puts more pressure on the councils and their already stressed waste management budgets. For the partial ban to work, it needs proper sensitization, effective inspection, clearly laid down penalties for offenders, and a genuine commitment to fight plastic pollution, of which we unfortunately do not have any of the above mentioned attributes. Hence, we strongly believe the best course of action to take is to outrightly ban single-use plastic in this country, like other countries have done, and it has worked perfectly. Take, for instance, Tanzania, which recently enforced the ban. Within a month, you could notice a tremendous improvement in curbing plastic pollution in that country.
The ruling Patriotic Front and the opposition UPND have been commended for pledging to conduct peaceful campaigns in the forthcoming Katuba parliamentary by-election. Zambian DNA spokesperson Spuki Mulemwa says his organization is flattered that the two Major political parties want to accord the electorate a chance to freely choose their representative. Mr. Molemwa has told the QTV News in a walk-in interview that Zambian DNA hopes that peaceful campaigns will also be extended to other areas where local government by-elections are due to be held.
There is no way we are going to pretend and look at the young people.
We are happy that both the PF and the UPND have pledged to campaign peacefully so that the voters can make an informed decision without being intimidated or without doing so in fear. We hope that there will be no violence in Katuba and indeed all the other places where there will be local government elections. It's good that the big parties and indeed whoever will be taking part in these elections to commit themselves to peaceful campaigns and eventually accept the outcome of the results. We don't want petitions after the results are declared. Go and campaign peacefully. If you lose, accept. Congratulate the winner. And may the one who emerges victorious also be magnanimous enough to shake the hands of the one who has lost the election.
Well, that story marks the end of our news, but before we go, here is a recap of stories in the headlines. Government says it will not declare foot and mouth disease, which recently spread to 3 new districts, a national disaster. Transparency International Zambia has welcomed the decision by RTSA Chief Executive Officer Zindaba Soko to proceed on leave to pave way for his investigation. And a fugitive police officer wanted for the murder of a fellow officer in Osaka has handed himself to police at Chipata Central Police Station. That will do it for the news. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.